I think I met Satan. I could not fall asleep last night. My mind just kept racing with thoughts, and they all seemed to be pointing to one conclusion. I think I met Satan last night. I know it sounds far-fetched and somewhat unrealistic, but look at what I have to say and then decide whether I'm spewing bullshit or not. You see, last night after work I went down to the beach and got myself a beer. I was sitting on a rock by the sea and enjoying the lovely scenery. It was a quiet, dark evening, but it was great. Sometimes I just like being alone like that. I made myself comfortable on the rock I was sitting atop of. I made it so the crashing sounds waves made whenever they hit the beach were the only thing I was paying attention to. My line of thought, or lack thereof, was broken by the somewhat deep, raspy voice of a man. The man whose voice appeared to be that of a person plagued by something. They asked me if it was okay to sit by me. I could not say no. I mean, there were many rocks he could have sat on, and they are part of nature. So I told him it's fine. The man sat on a rock next to the one I was atop of. I took a sip of my beer, turned to him and said, "You sound like something's bothering you. We could talk about it if you don't mind." I know it's an odd thing to say to a person you've just met, but it's not as if I had anything better to do, and he seemed to come here to ease his mind. The man whose face had the passage of time and the effects of prolonged stress written all over it turned to me. His dark brown eyes showed no emotion at all, and his spiky light brown hair was moving gently in the wind. He smiled and said, "Sure, but I have a question for you. Why do humans hate God so badly these days?" I was taken aback by the man's question. Up until this point, I had never met a philosopher in my life, so I had no idea whether or not he was one or just a man projecting his problems onto the divine. I was visibly confused by the question, but I did not want to make the situation any more awkward than it already was, so I've tried to gather up a reasonable answer to satisfy this strange man. So I ended up saying, "As a non-believer, I guess it's because God is always portrayed as the ultimate do-gooder. There is obviously so much bad in this world." The man ran his hand across his chin and chuckled a bit before saying, "What an anthropocentric way of thinking. I guess you are right. However, too bad it's not the right way to look at the subject at hand." I began feeling confused again and asked in response, "What do you mean it's not the right way? The existence of God is not proven. This means we can speak of him however we like as long as nothing is factual." A wide smile spread across the man's face as he formed his response to my words. "God and all other gods are real. They are, however, not exactly the way religions portray them. You know what deism is, right? Well, that's how it is in actuality when it comes to our God, Jehovah Sabaoth." I could not believe the words that came out of the man's mouth. At that moment, my mind had replaced all rationality with emotions, and I exploded at the man, raising my voice a bit. "Prove it!" "Okay. You were born on the 26th of October, 1994. My heart sank. How could he have known this? How did he know my exact birthday? I mean, I do have social media, and some of my personal information is out there. But I don't know this person. I thought he might be a stalker or something, but in order to be sure, I need to see what else he knows about me. And so I did my best to maintain an unimpressed look. He kept going on. "Your first serious relationship was with a girl named Iona, and she was the first green-eyed blonde girl you've ever met." I could no longer keep the fake look on my face. He knew too much somehow. I jumped onto my feet and yelled out, "Who the fuck are you and how do you know all this?" Mind you, I did date this girl. When I was 13, before Facebook even existed and before any legal papers concerned me. "Well, you wanted proof of Jehovah's existence. I gave it to you." If it wasn't for what he gave me personally, I wouldn't be able to know all of this," he responded at my outburst. I did not believe a word he said at this point and yelled out again, "Bullshit! You've probably got all this stuff out of someone to get to me. I'm calling the police." I shouted at the man as I whipped out my phone and began to dial. "Oh, well then, I'll just tell you something you told pretty much nobody about yourself at the age of 4, before you immigrated here. A teen took you to an abandoned building and performed fellatio on you and asked the same in return to be done to them. However, it did not really work." I dropped both my phone and my beer on the ground and he stopped talking. I don't know how he knew this. No one knew this. I kept it a secret. I guess I was trying to repress that. He could not have known this. I felt chills running down my spine and my whole body going stiff. The man turned his head to the ocean and said, "Sit down, boy. I'll explain everything." I just sat down on the rock again. I did not know what else to do. Him knowing this was impossible. I did not want to find out what other impossible things he knew or could do. I was scared shitless of this man at that point. I still am. He began speaking again, not breaking the stare from the ocean. "God's a living being, albeit not a biological one. He is living regardless, and he created the universe, but not in the usual sense. He simply jump-started the events that ended up leading to the Big Bang. He never really intervened in this reality. He did, however, pop up on this and some other planets from time to time. During one such time, he met Abraham, the Canaanite, and told him that if he wished people to remember him for all eternity, he would have revolutionized his way of thinking and acting. The sad part is that we are all still seeing signs of this revolutionized thinking, the Abrahamic religions. Jehovah was never into being worshipped. He didn't even know about such practices for the most part. The thing is, he didn't see humanity as any more than any of his other quote-unquote projects. And trust me, there were many. That is something you humans tend to forget. Omniscient beings need to be constantly busy with their minds, otherwise they'll go insane. That would make sense of what the Abrahamic religions say about him. That he may be good, but that he does evil things for the sake of humanity. Funny thing though, they wouldn't know that he does those evil things out of a broken psyche rather than some divine plan or supreme moral compass, if that was the case. This brings us to the next point. Even if Jehovah was all about excessive care for humanity, he still can't really eliminate all evils from this world, simply because he's busy. Before you ask me about the omnipotence thing, it's relative and needs his attention even if it wasn't. It all began to make sense to me. It did sound far more realistic to have an extremely powerful being that started our universe and never gave too many folks what religions have been trying to tell us for the past few millennia. It is stupid to believe that an all-powerful being would care so much about a single species of primates. I took a deep breath and dared myself to ask the man the following question. "So, how do you fit into all of this?" The man looked back at me with his expressionless face once again and said, "Long story short, I'm one of his sons. You call us angels. I never quite got the idea of Jehovah's children being messengers. It's just another stupid human assumption. Anyway, before you ask more questions, know this, I am older than this universe. I used to travel here a lot. And I was the one who found out about the evolution of the Homo sapiens, your species. When I first found you, I was intrigued by your intelligence. Finally, an earthly species I can communicate with. I wanted Jehovah to help you advance and prosper, and he rejected my requests, claiming it would disrupt the natural order. Amusingly enough, creating a new universe for him did not disrupt any natural orders. Being the obedient child I was back then, I listened and did nothing for your kind until around 60,000 years ago your population dropped drastically. The Toba eruption? I questioned him. That is the common belief, but no. The migrations of your species out of Africa weren't so successful at first, so the numbers plummeted. I was convinced that your kind might die out, so I made the trip to this lovely little rock and helped your ancestors figure out that they should be doing something in order to ensure the survival of their species. Jehovah found out and did not like my work. Even though it helped your kind a lot, he could not care less. I had disrupted his natural order, and an intense argument ensued. Keep in mind we're all informational beings, and he's more powerful than me, so no real physicality was involved. I began to piece up the information. I thought I knew who this man was, and I did not like the idea of him being who I thought he was. I just sat there and waited for him to either prove me right or disprove my probably insane thoughts. At the end of our little argument, he asked one of my siblings to throw me out of our home dimension, what you call heaven, and while the obedient little fuck that my brother is tried to do as he was commanded, I could feel the man tense up as he spoke. It was the first time I noticed him get emotionally invested in his words, and it did freak me out a bit. I remained silent and he continued speaking. It did not work out well, as I almost ended up taking my sibling out with me. Jehovah ended up doing the job himself. He threw me out of the house and into a cage inside this lovely little rock we're currently sitting on. You know, one thing he could never do was bring an end to my existence, neither physically nor emotionally, and yes, he has emotions. My heart sank to my ankles again, and I felt sheer fear creep up in my body, slowly, painfully. I even began to feel physically colder. I swallowed up my saliva and slowly formed the following question. Are you the devil? Bingo, he called out, raising an arm in the air. That's one of my names here on Earth, along with Satan, the Accuser, Lucifer, the Beast, and so on. Back in heaven, we didn't really have any, which means having a bunch of them here makes it all the better. What do you want with me? I stuttered. I don't know who or how or why, but all the myths about me, aside from falling and the immortality, are false. I think Enoch, who was the first human to find out on his own, is somewhat responsible for this. All I want from you is your eternal soul, of course. My body froze, and my eyes widened in utter terror. This person, whether he is the devil or not, was mad enough to scare me to death. He noticed my fear and began laughing. His laughter, surprisingly, did not sound evil or even strange at all. Maybe he's just good at hiding his intent, I'm still not sure. He stopped laughing and said, I'm just kidding. Souls don't exist, so you've probably nothing to worry about, nor does divine judgment or anything of the sort, since heaven is simply my home dimension, and the only humans to end up there are Enoch, and the one you call Gautama Buddha, for their discoveries regarding higher nature and advanced physics, such as our existence. Jehovah was oddly enthusiastic about having them in heaven, apparently, and hell, well, it is my cage, which, by the way, broke during an earthquake a few thousand years ago. Do you have any questions for me, though? Bear in mind I can't see the future or read the minds of dead beings. For some reason, this man that claims to be the devil made me feel a lot easier with the things that he said. I sighed, placed my hand on my face, and wondered what I could possibly ask without the risk of knowing something I'd regret later knowing. It took me a few moments to think of something, but then it hit me. The ultimate question, and so I placed my hand on my thigh. I managed to collect every bit of confidence I had in me to a single sentence. What's the actual divine plan then? I asked, hoping for some logical answer, perhaps something about discoveries or creation, or even maybe something artistic. But I ended up getting something that will most likely haunt me until the end of my days. The man chuckled. If you have a sense of humor, you're going to love this one. The real divine plan was like that of all living beings. Plans: find the most pleasure, avoid the most suffering. But the key word is was. Dumbfounded, I asked, was? Yes, was. He returned his face once more to the ocean and continued. You see, in Jehovah's case, and probably all other beings on his intellectual level, is finding ways to not go insane. And God's suffering is insanity. So, at a certain point, he became obsessed with death itself, and wanted to find out how it is to die. I was confused once more, and apparently showing it on my face. This mythos about a child of a virgin woman who is the son of God and the God himself sounds familiar. Yeah, Jesus Christ, the reason behind Christianity. Well, here comes the funny part. Jehovah made himself mortal as this Jesus man and got himself killed. I tried to convince him it was a bad idea, but our Creator was always a stubborn one. That's where the stories about me trying to tempt the Son of God away from the righteous path come from. My eyes widened with a complete and utter shock. Didn't know what to say. I was sure at this point I'm talking to a nutjob. Why on earth would God try to kill himself? It's just too illogical to be true. The shock wore off quickly and the sense of alertness replaced it. I was actually somewhat fearful for my safety at this point, due to believing this man was insane beyond hope. He kept going on. Too bad there's nothing that can escape the cold embrace of death, not even a god. Upon noticing my unchanging, shocked look, the man got up off the rock he was sitting on and proceeded to walk away, saying, as far as I managed to hear, "Well, I guess I should go now. I feel as if though I give you any more information, you might end up in a bad place. It was lovely, human. So long." Once I was sure he was far enough away, I jolted back up and picked up my phone, which was still lying on the sand. Surprisingly, there were 2 missed calls when I looked at the screen of my phone. I don't remember putting it on silent. The thing that made me change my mind about this guy, however, was the layer of ice I had noticed when I was passing by the rock he was sitting on. Upon seeing it, I ran. I ran until I reached my house, 20 minutes inland. I think I met Satan last night. And it's really scary knowing we are living in a godless world, with him roaming free.